Xi Jinping is not coming for the G20 Summit in New Delhi, but you already know that. What we don't know for sure is why. If the idea was to avoid scrutiny, it has boomeranged. There is now an intense spotlight on China. Every day new stories are emerging. Beijing refuses to clear the air. Tonight we'll tell you about the latest theory doing the rounds. It says Xi Jinping has been reprimanded. By whom? Party elders. And they are a powerful bunch. They're not happy with the Chinese president, and they're letting him know that. This is a rare instance of division within the Chinese establishment. Usually, critics of Xi Jinping end up behind bars or they just disappear. But this time, it's different. Senior Communist Party members are unhappy with the president. A few weeks ago, they held a secret meeting in China. It happened in a suburb of Beijing. The participants were Communist Party elders. They're like patriarchs in a family. And I say patriarchs because there are only men. No woman has ever made it to the top rungs of Chinese leadership. Now, these are men who have retired from official positions, but their influence in the party is still strong, so much so that they can shape Chinese policies. So these leaders met secretly outside Beijing. One of the key faces there was this man. His name is Zheng Qinghong. He is the former vice president of China. Zheng retired from government in the year 2007. He was a close ally of Jiang Zemin, the leader who presided over China when it was opening up. Jiang Zemin was president of China from 1993 to 2003, and Zheng was like his right-hand man. He also had a role to play in Xi Jinping's rise. Xi Jinping was his protege. Zheng ensured Xi's promotion to the Politburo. This is China's top decision-making body, the Politburo. And Xi Jinping was elected to it in 2007, and the move was a stepping stone towards his presidency. So you could say that Zheng paved the path for Xi Jinping's rise, which is why his opinion matters so much. Zheng met with other party leaders outside Beijing. They all had some concerns. The Communist Party elders think that there is political, economic, and social turmoil in China, and if effective countermeasures are not taken, the party will lose public support. In fact, let me quote from what they said: "We cannot have more turmoil." So they expressed concerns, and they decided to do something about what was happening. Their next meeting was in Baidehi. This is a seaside resort town, a very important place in China. Every year, the biggest leaders of the Communist Party meet here. It's an old tradition. This is an informal gathering. The meetings are kept private. China does not announce them. Neither does it share the outcomes of this summit. This meeting is done basically to facilitate a free exchange of ideas. But sometimes these conversations get leaked, like in this case. Some inside information has been leaked. Apparently, the party elders met Xi Jinping in private, and they shared a list of complaints, the list that they had compiled before coming to Baidehi. Now, they're unhappy about three main things. The recent purge in the Chinese military, 2 top generals who were in charge of China's rocket force went missing. This is said to have led to commotion within the PLA. Then China's foreign minister went missing. Beijing did not explain his disappearance. They just sacked him and appointed someone else. The elders wanted to know why. They think this episode has left China's foreign ministry unsettled. And their biggest concern is the economy. It's a complete mess. Investments are falling, growth is slowing down, and the debt bubble is bursting. The president was pulled up for all these things. What do you think was his response? He was not happy, of course. And he is said to have confided in his team. Turns out Xi Jinping blamed his predecessors for the problems. He blamed 3 men: Deng Xiaoping, Jiang Zemin, and Hu Jintao. He blamed them for the issues that are plaguing China today. We have some quotes. This is what the Chinese president reportedly said: "All the issues that were left by the previous 3 leaders are on my shoulders. I've spent the last decade tackling them, but they remain unresolved. Am I to blame?" That's apparently Xi Jinping venting after being pulled up by the party elders. Then he told his team to fix these problems, especially the economy. You see, it's the lifeblood of the Communist Party. In a country where political and social freedoms are curtailed, economic growth is the bargain that the government offers. If that too is lost, it poses existential challenges for the regime in Beijing. China's growth story looks bad, so much so that they've decided to stop releasing youth employment data. The decision came with a speech of Xi Jinping. Listen to what he said then. We must maintain historic patience and insist on making steady, step-by-step progress. So he's asking for the party's patience. The speech was released around the time when the Beidei Summit ended. Now the timing makes sense. Does this have something to do with the G20 no-show? He lost face in Beidei. He did not want a repeat in New Delhi, perhaps. Reports say Xi Jinping's aides were concerned about this. They feared that China's economic challenges would be highlighted at the G20, so they decided it's better for the president to miss the event. They're sending Premier Li Qiang in his place, and he's been given a task. The premier looks after China's economy. So now it's his job to address questions about China's growth at the G20. It's a tough assignment. And it says a lot about the Chinese leadership. When the going gets tough, the leader goes missing. So Xi's absence is the talk of the town. Some believe it could derail India's agenda for the G20 summit, maybe shift the spotlight from important issues. But New Delhi doesn't seem worried. Foreign Minister Jaishankar has spoken about the two absentees, Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin. The minister said such decisions are not unusual. He also said they have nothing to do with the host, India. Listen to this.
I think at different points of time in G20, there have been some presidents or prime ministers who, for whatever reason, have chosen not to come themselves. But that country and that country's position is obviously reflected by whoever is the representative on that occasion. I don't think it has anything to do with India. I mean, I think whatever decision they make, they would know best.
A bit generous, I would say. Putin's decision is indeed understandable. He's a wartime leader. He also has an international arrest warrant. But Xi Jinping's decision is not. He just visited South Africa for the BRICS summit. So not coming to India is questionable. It has all the makings of a sabotage. The United States has alluded to this. Their national security advisor was speaking about Xi Jinping's absence. He said, if China wants to play spoiler, it's their choice.
As far as the question of tensions between India and China affecting the summit, really that's up to China. If China wants to come in and play the role of spoiler, of course that option is available to them. What I think the chair, India, will encourage them to do, what we, the United States, and every other member, virtually every other member of the G20 will do, is encourage them to come in a constructive way.
Certainly less generous. But what about Jake Sullivan's president? Has Joe Biden survived the Wuhan virus scare? It seems like he has. Biden took another test on Tuesday, and that one also returned negative. So the White House has confirmed that Biden will travel to India after all. He's expected to depart Washington on Thursday, and on Friday he will hold talks with Prime Minister Modi. If you think that's early, well, think again. Biden is coming just 2 days in advance. Some leaders are already in New Delhi, like Bola Tinubu. He's the president of Nigeria. He and his delegation arrived in New Delhi on Tuesday. In case you're wondering, yes, he's the first head of state to arrive for the G20. Over the next few days, many more will be landing in New Delhi. In fact, the exact number is still not clear. You have around 20 leaders from member states. Then you have 9 invited countries. You also have heads of international organizations like the United Nations, the World Health Organization, the World Trade Organization, and the like. So simply put, the world will be run from New Delhi for 2 days. Of course, that means a lot of work. You need top-class surveillance, adequate security, proper connectivity, and of course, a lot of pomp. We told you about that yesterday, about what the cost will be. Around 1,000 crore rupees, which is $120 million. Let's take a closer look at the preparations then, starting with the airport. Each world leader will be traveling in their own plane. We're talking about high-value assets. Reports say the government is expecting at least 50 VVIP planes, 50. Where do you park them? 50 VVIP planes. The Delhi airport has around 220 parking stands. Most of the VVIP jets will be stationed there. A handful of them, like the US President's Air Force One, will be parked at the Palam Air Force Base. Will these arrivals hurt civilian traffic? Well, the government is trying to avoid that, but chances are it will. Flights on 4 dates have been reduced: September 8th, 9th, 10th and 11th. Airlines have been asked to cancel 25% of flights from Delhi on these days. That's around 160 flights. Some carriers have already started informing their passengers, if you have a flight on these dates, check with your airline, make sure it's not cancelled. And if you're looking to book, expect price surges and disruptions. As for the airport itself, it's all decked up. You can see lots of sculptures, fountains and murals. All of them have common themes. It's either India's G20 logo and presidency or something about Indian culture and history. So arrival done, now to hotels. Around 3,500 rooms have been booked across Delhi and nearby areas, 3,500 rooms. Some 10,000 hospitality professionals have been mobilized. Again, the focus is on Indian culture, the food, the decor and the welcome ceremony. All of it has been organized in line with the Indian culture. Across the city, final touches are being added, like painting pavements, brushing up statues, and watering public gardens. The people are also excited. Yes, they're bracing for some major disruptions. At the same time, there's also some curiosity. Most Indian youngsters have never seen a diplomatic event of this scale. Listen into some of them.
It's a time for India to highlight itself in front of the world, and the government is doing a great job. They're cleaning the roads and they beautified the Pragati Maidan where the whole show is going to happen. So I'm feeling great about it. It's a proud moment for being an Indian.
It's a great privilege and opportunity for India to host this G20, and as we can see the preparations that are going on, one thing that is really a benefit of this, that we are cleaning our city. That is really good.
Well, this was the government's idea to democratize the G20, to use this as a teaching experience for India's youth. In fact, Prime Minister Modi spoke about this in his interview to Money Control. It was a long and detailed interaction, but three things stood out. First, his emphasis on the India model of growth. Listen to what he said, I'm quoting. When global leaders meet me, they're filled with a sense of optimism about India. They're also convinced that India has a lot to offer. India's growth is being achieved with a human-centric approach that can be replicated in other countries too. Now, this is important. We've heard about America's capitalist model. We've heard about China's pseudo-communist model. Now, Prime Minister Modi is highlighting the India model. Secondly, the question of G20's future. Again, let me quote from what the Prime Minister said. It would be a good idea to seek the views of nations outside the G20, especially from the global south. Institutions that cannot reform with the times cannot anticipate the future or prepare for it. When it is seen that institutions cannot act against those who violate the global rules-based order, they risk losing credibility. Is that a message to China? It could even be a message to India's partner Russia. Either way, the point is quite clear: evolve to survive. And finally, point number 3. India's imprint on the G20, and I'm quoting again. We are a nation that looks at the world as one family. Our G20 motto says that. In any family, every member's voice matters. Our democratization of the G20 presidency is our investment in the capacity building of the people, especially youth. Again, it's the India model. The idea is to make policy more people-centric, to make people feel like the stakeholders that they are. I know that's a lot to expect from one summit. So let's see what the weekend brings. But before we end the story, here's a glimpse of where the main event is taking place, Bharat Mandapam. These night shots are from yesterday. The whole building is bathed in lights and lasers. The G20 member flags are visible in the front yard. You can also see this new statue. It's around 27 feet tall. It's a statue of Nataraj, a dancing depiction of the Hindu god Shiv. So New Delhi is ready and waiting for the G20 leaders. No expenses or effort has been spared. Now it's all about the execution. We'll be tracking all the updates throughout the next couple of days. Talking about expensive things, how can we not mention the iPhone? It is at the center of the US-China tensions now. Reports say China has banned government officials from using iPhones for work. In fact, they won't even be allowed to bring an iPhone to office. China is yet to respond to this report. Apple too has not issued a statement. So it's still not clear how widespread the orders are. The iPhone is the only foreign-made smartphone with a dominant share in the Chinese market. But the brewing tensions between Washington and Beijing could threaten that. Tech is at the center of the US-China tensions, and it looks like Apple could be their latest victim. Our next report tells you more.
October 30th, 2009. It was a big day for both Apple and China. 2 years after launching in the US, the iPhone had finally hit the Chinese markets. But for Chinese people, it was nothing new. They weren't waiting for the official launch. Instead, they were tapping friends and relatives traveling abroad to bring back the iPhone. Such was the demand for the smartphone. 14 years later, Apple still dominates the high-end smartphone market in China. There's no dent to its charm. But even that charm couldn't keep it out of a geopolitical tussle. Apple finds itself in the middle of the US-China tech war. Reports suggest that China has banned government officials from using iPhones. They can't even bring them to work. It's still not clear what the exact orders are, or how many officials it affects. Beijing hasn't commented on this, and Apple too is yet to issue a statement. But if true, the ban could have a chilling effect, both on Apple and the foreign smartphone market in China. Apple counts China as one of its biggest markets. It relies on it for over 19% of its revenue. Plus, China is a major production site for the company. A vast majority of iPhones are assembled in China. The ban on Apple mirrors similar US bans on Huawei and TikTok. China has long tried to reduce dependence on foreign technology. This is to bolster cybersecurity and limit the flow of information outside its borders. But the matter of fact is, Apple's biggest selling point is privacy. And in the past, it has complied with China's rules. It has removed apps from the Play Store and built data centers in the country. But even these moves were not enough for China, or its concerns about national security. Plus, there's the tit-for-tat battle with the United States. Washington has already imposed strict controls, especially on the export of cutting-edge chips to China. Beijing, too, has hit back. It restricted shipments from firms like Boeing. Also, this won't be the first time China cracks down on high-profile foreign technology. Back in 2021, some officials were reportedly banned from driving Tesla cars. Security services were concerned about the cameras in the cars. They thought it could be used for espionage. So, is Apple the new victim in this tussle? Looks like it. So far, the company has been spared in the tech battle between the two economic powers, but not anymore.
Now let's turn our attention to West Asia. What happens in Vegas could soon happen in Dubai. The United Arab Emirates has appointed a new gaming authority. It's not clear what gaming here refers to, but guess who has been hired to lead this federal entity? Veterans of the US gambling industry. The world is betting on a years-long speculation. The UAE could become the first Gulf state to legalize casinos. You see, Islam prohibits gambling. The UAE has strict regulations against it, but the country could wave aside religious criticism and decriminalize gambling. After all, the stakes are quite high. The UAE wants to triple its tourism revenue, and what better option than gambling? It could pull in over $6 billion in revenue every year. Our next report tells you more.
This is Dubai, a city in the United Arab Emirates, home to the Burj Khalifa and numerous other skyscrapers. Its highways are full of gas-guzzling sports cars, and the harbors are flooded with super yachts. In Dubai, money doesn't talk, it screams. With its glitzy desert landscape, it's become the city of choice for international stars and businessmen. It's often called the playground for the rich. But lately, Dubai has garnered another nickname, the Las Vegas of West Asia. Not just because Dubai is known for its party life, but also because, much like Nevada's Vegas, it could soon become a gambling hub. The UAE has set up a new gaming authority. It's called the General Commercial Gaming Regulatory Authority. It will facilitate and manage the quote-unquote economic potential of commercial gaming. Now, no one knows what the word gaming here refers to, but most are betting on, you guessed it, gambling. For starters, the federal authority is being led by veterans of the gambling industry from the US. In 2018, Dubai began playing host to the famous Caesars Palace, the only branch of this hotel chain that doesn't offer gaming amenities. Meanwhile, resorts like MGN and Wynn that are popular for casinos are under construction in the desert nation. They've announced plans to set up gaming facilities. Again, with that word. The UAE doesn't want to come out and clarify the term just yet. Many believe the UAE could decriminalize gambling. So why can't the UAE just say it out loud? Because this will be a controversial move. You see, Islam prohibits gambling, and the UAE has strict regulations against it. If caught gambling, one could face up to 2 years in prison. Countries like Egypt and Lebanon allow gambling. So does Malaysia, which is a predominantly Muslim nation. But if the UAE allows it, it will become the first Gulf state to legalize casinos. This is bound to ruffle some feathers, but experts say the UAE is keen to take its chances and wave aside religious criticism. Why? Because the stakes are high. The UAE plans to triple its tourism revenue. Last year, tourism accounted for 9% of the Gulf nation's GDP. It drew in about $45 billion. By 2031, the government hopes to increase it to $121 billion. So the UAE wants to attract high-spending tourists and is willing to go all in. The introduction of resort-style casinos, much like those under construction in Dubai, could bring in the big bucks. Reports say the UAE could pull in over $6 billion of gaming revenue annually. That's not far from the Vegas gaming revenue. It made a record-breaking $8.3 billion last year. Some say Dubai could even surpass Vegas in the long run, because unlike Nevada, it will probably target high-end and high-net-worth individuals. No one is sure if that will actually happen, but one thing is clear. The UAE has big money-making ambitions. So chances are it will transform Dubai into the next sin city, even if some view it as a literal sin.
And now it's time for Vantage Shorts, images that tell the story. Have you ever abruptly walked out of a party or an event? If you have, then you and the President of the United States have something in common. Joe Biden has now sparked a controversy after he abruptly walked out of the Medal Honor ceremony. The Medal of Honor ceremony, in fact. No one knows why he did so, but the internet is calling it disrespectful. In Argentina, students used recycled lids to make a massive, messy mural. And Freddie Mercury's piano is up for auction for around $4 million. This was the piano on which he composed the 1975 hit song Bohemian Rhapsody. And finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1975, 18-year-old Martina Navratilova sought political asylum in the US. The rising tennis star was defecting from communist Czechoslovakia. She became a US citizen in 1981 and went on to become one of the biggest tennis stars in history. We'll leave you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. crossed 2 million subscribers on YouTube. This is arguably the fastest growing news platform, and we can't thank you enough for fueling this growth. All those of you who join us every day to watch this show and more, thank you. We launched Vantage 7 months ago, and these have been some very rewarding 7 months for us. So from the entire team here, heartfelt gratitude.